Growing up, I wasn't very smart in the traditional sense. In fact, this is quite possibly still the case. Despite my best efforts, my top grades in my favorite subjects were still in the low B range. Beyond that, I absorbed information very slowly regardless of the method of teaching. Because of this, I didn't believe myself to be intelligent. It wasn't until about 5 years ago when I realized exactly how I learned and that one way of learning isn't better than another, at least not universally. But we'll get into that in a little while. While a case as extreme as Rainbow Dash's is rare, there are many people who can't be taught by any of the normal means and think that they are without intelligence because of it. Being forced through a system where only a couple of different methods are applied can very easily imply that if you cannot get through it, then you are not smart. Eventually, it's not just the students themselves that think this, but it's also their peers, and way more often than should ever be the case, their teachers. Firstly, intelligence cannot be defined by any one thing. It's a great mixture of everything that makes someone who they are in relation to their skills that rely heavily on the mind and how they apply them. Secondly, when you think someone is unintelligent, whether you realize it or not, you forfeit your ability to take them seriously enough to help them or to let them help you. Not only is it our duty to help our friends, and a basic human need for friendship when we cannot help ourselves, but most good teachers will also tell you that they've learned a lot from their students. So when you're in this position, try not to assume that whoever you're dealing with is unintelligent or isn't trying. Instead, do what Twilight did and figure out what works for the individual. Even if it seems like a hopeless cause, I can almost guarantee you that there is a way. I know this because I've been the bad student and was helped, as well as have had plenty of quote-unquote lost causes come through me, and I've figured out how to help them despite my lack of formal training. It just takes patience, creativity, passion for what you're teaching, and faith in those that you are teaching. There is an off chance that with years of discipline and effort, Rainbow Dash could have rewired her brain to absorb knowledge with traditional methods. However, the time that she would have needed to take to do this would have been a serious chunk out of her flying practice, making her run the risk of falling out of shape. But that's not to say that it isn't sometimes the fault of the student. I'm well aware that there are lazy people of all ages. I'm well aware that Rainbow Dash was acting like one of them during the first act of the episode. And I'm also well aware that you can't teach someone who doesn't care enough to learn. I used to be in Rainbow Dash's horseshoes regarding concern with the history of my sport. So why is history important with something like the Wonderbolts? Let's take for example, back when I had to learn the same lesson as Rainbow Dash. I was trying to learn stage combat to get on a stunt choreography team. My mentor put an emphasis on knowing the history behind each movement and technique, and I thought it was useless until I saw another school that didn't emphasize the history. I'll keep this short and say that the other school was simply inadequate. It was then that I realized that in disregarding their history, they were forsaking the knowledge of our predecessors who had perfected the arts, those who've worked hard and sacrificed so much to bring us this knowledge. So by knowing your history, you know exactly why you're doing what you do, as opposed to either half-heartedly following a tradition that you don't understand or doing away with classic knowledge because it contradicts your own belief. Later on, when I had to apply this same principle as a teacher, I had to figure out which students learned by being told, which students learned by being shown, and which students learned by being quizzed. And then there were the times when I'd find a creative way to make the trivia more interesting. I only had one student in those years who couldn't memorize the information the way the others did. After a bit of trying, I found that he could regurgitate information while occupying as much of his brain as possible. I did this by holding a conversation with him about the necessary history while drilling various exercises with him. He learned without knowing he was learning, just like Rainbow Dash did in this episode. Knowledge is power in more ways than most people realize. Rainbow Dash overcame her inner weakness to tackle a challenge that would have been beyond her abilities. Twilight proved that even though one's intelligence may be unconventional, it's intelligence nonetheless. So if we can find a way to turn our weaknesses into our strengths to overcome these hurdles, or if we can help others overcome these challenges by being creative and hands-on in teaching them, then perhaps we can do the same. And that's the moral of the story. If you have a topic you would like to hear discussed, or if you have an episode, fanfiction, product, or anything else you would like to hear reviewed, send me a YouTube message or leave a comment below. You can also drop comments, questions, topic suggestions, and review suggestions by liking Brawny Debates on Facebook, following on Twitter, or sending an email to bronydebates@yahoo.com. Have a great day, and I look forward to hearing from all of you soon.